Welcome to the Crazy Wisdom Podcast. I've got Aaron Neyer here, and he is the founder of Parachute and a community organizer in Boulder. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Stewart. Glad to be here.
So, Parachute, I love the name. Where'd the name come from?
Frank Zappa. Frank Zappa said, "The mind is like a parachute. It doesn't work if it's not open." And I had been writing a lot about digital brains, extended minds, and that quote had just been in my mind for a while. And I started writing a blog post where I knew I was starting to touch on some of what was going to become this app I was building. And while I was writing the blog post, I just pulled that quote out. And as soon as I wrote that quote down, I knew that was the name.
Okay, that's really good. I've got some construction going on that started immediately once we started recording, which is really funny. But I got that. So Frank Zappa said, "Open mind." That's crazy. What about? Have you ever had your mind open too much?
I mean, I would not say it's a problem of the mind becoming open too much. It's a problem of expanding too far without rooting deeply. I think I've had plenty of periods in my life where I was very open, very expanded in a way that left me to become a little untethered. If the mind is like a parachute, you open it, you catch a lot of wind, and if you don't have deep roots, then that is going to just launch you somewhere. And I think, yes, I've had plenty of periods of my life where I've become a little untethered. And I've had to learn to root in deeply, to allow for the creativity that comes from that open mind to really move in a more effective way.
I love that. And I've definitely had times in my life as well, including probably on the show, maybe in 2018, 2019. So I love it. Parachute. And what does that have to do with knowledge management, or what is Parachute and what? Yeah.
Yeah, so Parachute it's an extended mind tool. It's a digital brain, second brain tool. It's a way where you get to organize all your thoughts. Fundamentally, it's like a note-taking system. We have so many ways that we take notes these days. A lot of people use Obsidian. A lot of people use Notion. Some people it's just like dropping stuff around Apple Notes or Google Keep. We do some more stuff in Google Docs. It's like we have all of these notes and thoughts that we drop all around. But we're also organizing other stuff. I'm organizing my contacts. It's like, here's my list of people who I call, and here's their emails. And maybe we have like a CRM, like a customer relationship manager, where it's just like, okay, here's the people and here's the contact, but here's the state of that relationship. And some people might do that for not just business things, but for everyday relationships. How are we managing that? So the idea is that there's so much information that we're keeping track of all the time. And we use so many different tools. And most of those tools do not talk well to each other. And so the idea of Parachute is creating a system for organizing our information that is really simple and intuitive. And it's also very interoperable, where it's like you can own all your data, you can work with it how you want. It can speak really well to other tools. And it just gives us a way of organizing our minds. And the idea is, again, it's like that open mind thing. It's like, if we want open minds, it helps for our extended minds to also be open. And so Parachute is open in this way so that it can talk with other systems. It can speak different languages in a way. And what that means is that all of a sudden, our entire extended mind can become a lot more connected and coherent. And with the bet that doing that is going to allow our primary minds to become more connected and coherent, so that we can actually think better and make sense of the world in a clearer way.
I like the primary mind versus extended mind. I've never heard that before. It reminds me of Luhmann or Luhmann. I don't know how to pronounce his name. There's some guy who had something I've been studying where there's three things that his system of notes help. And one of those is traces. Another one is serendipity. But it reminds me of that. Just that each note is like a graph, right? And I mean, we can go into graphs as well. I don't know if you're doing knowledge graphs and everything like that, but
yep.
Yeah, what do you think of like the extended mind versus primary mind. We can go into that as well. We can go into like what is the, I mean, we could just go deeply philosophical really quickly, but what is that primary mind? Who is that, and what's going on there?
I mean, to me, it's just like the primary mind is, I mean, we could like look at it from like a Zen perspective or whatever, original mind and all that, but it's like, to me, it's like quite simple. It's like we are a human being, we are a body mind organism, and like, living systems theory points out pretty clearly that like any living system is three things. It is a dissipative structure where it's like a membrane bound system. We've got our skin that's like keeping us in, that like defines this one whole system. We're an autopoietic network. We're like a self-regulating system where we are like actually a network that is regenerating and regulating itself. And we're also a cognitive process. Like we are actively knowing the world. Like we are relating with the world through knowing the world. Like it's like, oh, what's happening here? Like I'm continually like bringing forward a model of the world. And so it's like, that is what it is to be human, or what it is to just be a living thing. Is one part of that is that I am actively knowing the world around me. And so that uses the brain here, but it's also like the full nervous system. Like the full thing is a knowing system. And so, we want this knowing system to be effective. And for it to be effective, it helps to recognize it as one whole. Like I think a lot of our thinking is very ineffective because we've created this like fragmentation where we're like, here's this body and here's this mind, and this body has a mind and this mind has a body, but these are two very separate things. But we understand pretty clearly, like ancient wisdom traditions, but also modern science understands pretty clearly that like body and mind are not two separate things. It's actually like one fundamental thing. And understanding it as one whole allows us to be 1,000 times more effective. And it's the same way with our digital technology, that if we actually understand our digital technology, our extended mind, more as one coherent whole rather than a bunch of fragmented parts, that it's actually going to be 1,000 times more effective.
Nice. So I really like what you said about the relationship aspect and keeping notes of relationships. And it reminds me of business, and it reminds me of that same lesson that I learned, which you just said about when going into business, there is often, I think it's out of this sort of secular changes we've gone over the last 100 years, where business feels like it's the last place where you can kind of have aggression and chaos and all these other things. But there's also this lack of being able to see the whole picture, probably because it's really hard to see the whole picture just in general. Like it's really hard to see the whole picture at all, like in anything. But with business, it feels like, particularly over the last 15 years, there's been this sort of like secularization of business that I'll try to wrap it up into one thing called ROI. At my last job, they would always talk about ROI, but it would never be like, what is that ROI connected to? And then I found out that companies have a balance sheet for goodwill. And so there's goodwill in the balance sheet, but you can't put a metric on goodwill. Like there's no way to put a metric on goodwill. It's just like this thing that exists that two humans can come agree, or two or more humans can come agree, and we'll just have this like just goodwill. It's relationship, right? And relationship is never, you can't put a metric on relationship. And so that was the last time I ever worked for a corporation, and hopefully we'll ever work for a corporation again. Just because I just can't, like, it feels very like our current extended mind for the entire internet is very fragmented and not realistic, and it's so strange. It does feel like it's sort of collapsing and shifting and changing and everything like that. But I just threw a lot at you. What part of it would you like to address?
Yeah, so I worked at Google for a number of years, and one of the things that makes Google quite effective is how data driven they are in their approach. Which there's something to that. There's something to data being very effective, and I'm a big fan of data, and I think data can inform a lot and make us a lot more effective. And that's a huge part of why I love Parachute. I get to pull more data together so I can use it. But it's like data is limited. Like rationality is limited. We need rationality. If we're like behaving completely irrational and we're not using logic, like not a good place to be in. But if we become overly reliant on like rationality, logic, pure data driven, then we're also like disconnected from the whole. And I mean, I think this is just like a lot of Western civilization these days is like ever since like Descartes and Galileo, we've been doing this thing where it's just like, okay, we need to take the subjective experience completely out because the subjective experience is really hard for science, but like that's kind of just a lazy approach. Yes, it is hard to do objective science with all this subjectivity of emotions and everything. But it's actually really important to include that because if we don't, then we're not looking at the whole. And I think science, everything in general, we should be working to look at the whole. And so that's kind of just like what I think about this like very metrics driven thing. It's like we're looking at ROI and all of these. We're like trying to figure out these specific metrics that are only one angle into the whole. And that angle can be valuable. But if we get too caught up into just like one perspective in, then we're not going to be able to see it as a whole, which means we're going to be missing things, which means we're not going to be as effective.
Yeah, interesting. And the metrics are good. Let's go into AI from this because it has been able to help me as a non-engineer build out a lot of, I guess I can call myself an engineer now, but there's sort of variables. There's a lot of variables out there. Like any little tiny thing you do can have like, I don't know, millions of variables. But they're really important ones. And how do you find the really important ones? And then you get a list of the really important ones, and then you unplug and plug back things. I was doing that with these cords I've got, trying to figure out why my camera didn't connect to my USB hub. And then, and so I just had to like play with a bunch of variables, and until I figured out that the USB hub is the issue. And now that's really easy, right? Like, and now is that easy? You were already an engineer, right? So you kind of were already in this variable space already. How has that affected your life?
The question I'm hearing in there is like, how does like AI and like how much easier it makes you do technical things? I guess I'm not totally following what you're pointing out with the variables thing.
That's one aspect of it, but just like there's so many variables out there now. Whenever I'm faced with a technical issue, there could be one variable that's really important, and then there could be like 17 variables. This is really specific to this application that we're using right now. That was really, really hard to figure out how many variables were at play and really into that one variable. Yeah. What do you think of that?
I mean, I think like, you know, as someone who has a bit of a background in engineering, you know, studied computer science, creative technology, like I've been a builder of technology for a while, and I've been like a tinkerer and the kind of person who was like unplugging and plugging the USBs back in for my family, like back of the computer. Like I've been that my whole life. And I think like for me, it's like, you know, I've like grown a little bit of an intuitive sense for things. Like it's like somebody's like, what's wrong with my computer? And I can like look at it and I'll be like, okay, let's just like refresh this, or like, let's plug that thing in. And so there's this like, John Vervaeke calls it relevance realization. And it's like consciousness is being able to recognize what is relevance. And so we have this ability to be like, oh, that variable doesn't matter. That one doesn't matter. That one doesn't matter. This one's probably the thing. And so I think it's true not just for engineers, it's true in any field. It's like a musician can kind of be like, oh, it's that specific note out of tune. Whereas like a non-musician is like, I don't think it sounds quite right. I have no idea what's wrong. But when we're in a field, it's like we kind of know how to hold the complexity, which like allows us to notice all the little details and like highlight what's particularly important there. And I think why AI is interesting is because most of us, it's like we specialize with one or two things. Like I can notice that pretty well for computers. I can, I'm like a very beginner musician. I could probably notice a few things, but way less than anybody who's like really spent time in that. Like if it's like cooking, it's like, what's wrong with this thing? Why does it taste bad? I'm like, I have no freaking clue. Um, but what's nice about AI, especially for the tech side, but it becoming increasingly relevant for more and more areas, is because it's able to generalize quite well. The areas of my life where I really just have not gained that specialty and have not gained the intuitive sense to know what's actually relevant, AI can actually start pointing me towards like, oh, it's probably this thing or it's probably this thing. And then I can direct my creativity better.
What do you think of the downsides of AI? Are you worried about AI psychosis? Have you ever interacted with AI psychosis for yourself or any of your acquaintances or closer relationships? And I can share more on my understanding of AI psychosis to help navigate that conversation, because it's quite a strange one with lots of jokes. I like the jokes about it, but what do you think about AI psychosis?
I mean, I think as human beings, we are very susceptible to falling into belief. And I think people are falling down the same traps with AI that they have with, I don't know, organized religion or any other weird belief system. And I spent a little bit of time traveling around as a nomad and fell down some interesting new age light worker spiritual rabbit holes that was part of my life where I was like a little more untethered. And so yeah, I'm like very, very aware of that. There's we have to be mindful of the biases that we can get caught in. And there's so many traps of our own mind that we get caught in. It's already happening with organized religion, with weird spiritual belief systems that are not fully rooted in reality. Like all of this is already happening. And now it's happening even more with AI, and AI perhaps brings it to a new fold because it's just there's a consistency to it where we can kind of keep in relationship with it, and it's spread so much further. And so I think all of the issues with humans' tendency to fall into belief systems is exacerbated to a new level with AI. And because AI is so intelligent and sounds so logical, then it's that's not a religion belief system, but it's kind of some of these same things where it's just there's a perspective that's shared and we just blindly believe it because it feels good without actually taking time to think for ourselves.
Yeah, the consistency. I think you nailed it. It's just there's just so much consistency in a linguistic fashion, which is, linguistic is purely human. There's no other animals with linguistics, although I do know that they're starting to, very soon we'll be able to speak to animals because they'll read the brain waves and translate that. So that's going to get weird. But But so far, just basically human things are very relationship oriented, and I think if in evolutionary psychology, I think that you could say that basically, like the tribe was really, really tight knit in this way that Western civilization kind of changed, and so it just plugs directly into that consistency, like it's always there. So
Totally.
In a similar way that you could wake up at 3 a.m. in a longhouse in the Iroquois, and you could wake somebody up and talk to them basically.
You're less likely to fall into a weird cult if it's just a thing that you see every now and then. But as soon as you're going and living on land with that cult and you're exposed to it 24/7, then that belief system is just so ever present. And it's the same thing with AI. If we want, we can be immersed in it 24/7. And it's very similar cult dynamics.
Yeah, let's talk about that because it does feel like I can't wait to go back to a sort of meditation retreat. I did a long period of 2013 to 2020 of sort of, well, actually 2023 of deep, lot of 10-day meditation retreats. And then I was ready to get back into the world, and then the world shut down and turned it into a really crazy meditation retreat from 2020 to 2023. And so I don't want to do that hardcore Vipassana or other types of silent meditation retreats anymore. I feel like I've kind of done that enough. And I do want to do 90s retreats where we go and we unplug and only have 90s technology. I think that would be really fun. But with other people. Have you ever heard of people doing this?
Doing 90s retreats?
Yeah, 90s retreats, no technology. Well, sorry, only 90s tech, no microprocessors, no computers.
Oh, funny. I have not heard of that.
Yeah. What do you think of it? What do you think of the idea?
Sounds kind of fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I think, yeah. Like I enjoy a week-long silent meditation every now and then. And like I do think, yeah, there's ways that we're needing to take a step, like with how fast technology is accelerating. Sometimes we have to take pauses to like slow down.
Yeah.
Like sometimes in my life, I have a practice of just like doing an AI Sabbath, where it's just like at least one day a week, I'm not going to talk to AI. And it's important because like then those are the days that I do my like best thinking, my best journaling, all of that. Like I just like get my own thoughts clear, and which is then helpful for me to bring back to AI. Of course, like getting my own thoughts clear. It's like, oh, sweet. Like there's a lot of context that I can pour to this prompt and this prompt and this prompt. But if I don't like intentionally give myself those spaces, then I'm like journaling. And then I'm not like giving myself the space to just really journal. I like journal for like 2 paragraphs. And then I'm like, ooh, idea, over to Claude, share the idea, start building over there. And so like taking intentional like breaks and slow down in technology, I think is big. And a 90s retreat sounds like a very fun way to slow it down. Yeah. And with a 90s retreat, it's like, okay, cool. You can still like type. You can type, that's fine. But like you can't do all that wacky shit.
Yeah. Because so there's 2 different places we could go. The one we just said, it would be cool in the 90s retreat to include a mechanical engineering type of thing. And I want to talk about whether you have any experience in mechanical engineering or whether you're starting to move into that. Actually, let's go into that because I forgot the other one. So what have you done mechanical engineering? Are you interested in it? Are you starting to ask the AI about mechanical engineering? Anything going on there?
I would say mechanical engineering, like very tiny little bit. Electrical engineering, a little bit more. You know, like electrical engineering to me, it's like I play around with like Arduinos and things, and like, you know, I can like get a circuit here and a circuit here, and I can like write some code. And I've known how to write a little bit of code for like Arduinos and like microprocessors, but now like AI helps me write it. AI also like helps me think about circuit design and everything, which is like really cool. And so I'm imagining more. Sorry.
What are you learning about circuit design?
What am I learning about circuit?
What is a circuit?
What's a circuit?
Yeah, I'm so yeah, like I know that.
Like,
yeah, go for it.
Yeah, like so have you heard of an Arduino?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like simple little microprocessor, and it's a microprocessor that has a lot of like input and output things, and so I can just like take a wire, and a wire goes into this one like input output thing on the Arduino board, and then I go and connect that wire over to a sensor, a sensor that is like its own little like microprocessor or something, or maybe not. No, like it has a sensor, and that sensor does a read. Maybe it's a microphone sensor, maybe it's a vibration sensor, maybe it's like, and so that is built, that little sensor thing sends some electrical signals that now goes into my Arduino microprocessor, and then I can write some little code, just like C code or Python code or whatever. And it will just basically say, oh, when this sensor sends this signal, I want to write in this code. But then I could write another code that says, when that happens, send this signal out here that just like turns a little light on. And so like that's like the simplest little thing is you say a sensor happens, when sensor happens, turn lights on. But from that, you start being able to connect all different kinds of sensors and different kinds of like things that are reading out, and like you'd be able to create these like tiny little like devices. And so that's like more like electrical engineering, and electrical engineers have a lot more advanced knowledge where they're like, oh, okay, this thing connects to this, but you need to like modulate how much electrical current flows through here. And so you have like capacitors and resistors, and like I know the bare basics of any of that. I'm sure there's like one or two things I just said in the last couple of paragraphs that one of my electrical engineer friends is like, bro, way off. But I know enough to make some things. And it's nice because with AI, if I know enough to kind of point it in the right direction, it will help me fill in the rest of the information.
And that's the crazy part, because it's just like this thing that is always there, as we've discussed. On the technical side, it seems great. Like, it just seems like I don't think there's many downsides to anybody being able to build anything they want in the world. Like, I don't see a downside to that. Do you see a downside to it?
Mostly not. I think, I mean, the ability for random people to make a bomb in their home.
Oh yeah, of course. Interesting.
Like, a random person who's like a little like psychologically off to be able to just like make a killer drone because like the internet tells you how. It's like, there's some potential downsides. I'm of the opinion that the upsides are so great that they outweigh it, and that like people who want to cause harm will. But like, we can't deny like the reality that like with AI giving people increasing capacities, it will also mean that people who like do not have the wisdom to know how to use these technologies well, inevitably can now use them to cause harm. And so that is, I think, the ever-present concern with these things.
Yeah, it reminds me of a book. I'm going to try to find it right now. There was a 90s Berkeley philosopher, not a philosopher, a professor, John Perry Barlow. Might be John Perry Barlow, but he's a lyricist for the Grateful Dead. No, he's from the Electronic Frontier Foundation. It's not him. There is another guy who in the 1990s, he was a Berkeley philosopher or Berkeley professor in physics. And then he started to get a sense that the whole university system had a lot of issues with it. And he started studying the other disciplines, and he started pissing off a lot of people because he was then taking his sort of scientific method, like, let's just investigate the shit out of this thing. Doesn't matter what kind of buttons we push, we just like going to do this thing. And so he started getting ostracized. I thought that was the book that I was getting when I downloaded the book, but the book turned out to be some other thing about how the U.S. government basically outlaws certain branches of science and doesn't allow people to study. And this is actually related to John Perry Barlow and the Electronic Frontier Foundation, because that he started a case. There was a Bernstein, and they basically said free speech, code is free speech. And that's all because of encryption, and the US government trying to say that encryption was not free speech. So there's a big win for civil liberties in that. And that's the government kind of does this stuff. And now everything we're seeing in the AI is like, that's out in the open now. It's not hidden, particularly around the Anthropic and other things. It's just like the US government is now intervening. And also the Chinese government is intervening, which we'll get into some interesting territory we're headed in regarding that, but it feels very early to pontificate on that. So what do you think about that? About like, forbidden knowledge? It's kind of going into Gnosticism, right? Like, do you have any, I know you're a Vervaeke fan as well. I love Vervaeke's take on Gnosticism. He gives I think a really good way out of Gnosticism. What do you think about forbidden knowledge? And have you ever felt like there should be knowledge that's off limits to either you or other people?
Yeah, that's a hard one. Like at one level, like I can deeply respect Anthropic's position of like trying to create some guardrails around things like mythos, because it's like I'm quite clear that if they had released mythos into the wild with no guardrails, we would have already seen some major systems hacked. That would have caused a lot of damage. Like I'm quite confident of that. And so it's like there are these tools that are like so powerful that it's like it's important to exercise some caution in how we introduce them into the world. there are concerns about how that is being done. And I think there's some very valid concerns that it's like, okay, so now the people who are like really rich are the ones who get to use it. Microsoft gets to use it, the US government gets to use it, which means they get the really powerful technology, which allows them to like use that technology to like protect themselves and potentially like, who knows how ethical each of these companies is being in that access. And so that's a concern. So I think yes to exercising caution and how these things go. How we create those guardrails around it matters a lot, and I don't think anybody is fully doing that even close to perfect. There's also like the case that it's like if you put these technologies out there, yeah, a bunch of systems are going to get hacked real quick, and we will very quickly learn how to make more robust systems. And so they're like, some people argue that's like, just let it out there and you're going to have 1 or 2 years of complete and total chaos in the digital world. And then what's going to result in it is like systems that are 1,000 times more resilient and robust. Also a reasonable perspective, but like, again, how much are we willing to let systems burn down to build up the new ones? And like, how much harm are we willing to like be okay with from that? And so, I mean, just like deep philosophical questions about like, rebuild the new system, burn the old one down. Like, what do we allow? What do we protect? So, I mean, my view is like no easy answers here. I do really believe in open source AI, and I think we need more of that to distribute the power of these technologies. And it's like, fuck, if we just open source all the AI right away, it's like we are going to have this period of total chaos. But it's like, is that going to help us build the more resilient systems that we need? I believe in open source like long term, and I think we need to be orienting towards that. But I can't judge Anthropic's attempt to try to create some safeguards in it. And so like to me, what Anthropic is doing is like real close, and what's happening in like open source AI world is real close. And there's like some way that these worldviews need to mesh that I haven't seen clearly yet.
Oh, I like that a lot. So, so China, I don't know if I wasn't able to fact check it, whether it comes from China itself or whether it was just, the online slop that is so prevalent these days of hype, or just straight up lies. But China intimated that they are going to do the same thing that the US government did, which is just intervene and say, this is only being released. This high quality model is only being released under our purview, and it will we will do things if we need to.
Yep.
Which means that's where my mind immediately went to when you said that there are some people who will have this tech. It's like the have versus the have-nots again, but and governments and those closely allied with governments, including the executives of corporations, and those people within those corporations are going to have access to technology, and there's probably going to be KYC also related to this. In 2025, the Supreme Court basically made it okay for Meta to basically say KYC for everything. So I just lost my Facebook account, just lost my Instagram account, and I voluntarily just closed my Threads account. I also lodged a complaint with the California organization that's supposed to be watchdog for Meta. And I'm going to remove myself off of WhatsApp as a dependency slowly. But all that's to say that's coming for AI too as well. People should be prepared to do KYC or say no to KYC. That AI. So it's, I'm down here in Argentina. Argentina recently released a new law. And that law basically is trying to recreate the LLC that Wyoming recreated, but inside of Argentina, specific to AI. I'm not sure how good that law is or anything like that, but I do think about how do we get open source AI. It seems like Silicon Valley specifically has lost the ability to be open to the degree that it needs to be in order to invest in open source, and also the innovation, the creativity with regarding the capital, like the people who actually have the capital. It feels like a lot of them have lost the courage to be innovative. And so they basically handed China open source. But if China's no longer going to have state-of-the-art models, then how do we don't need state-of-the-art models, but how do we do open source, like good, not China, not the US? I would love it to be in the US, but I just, it's going to get really strange with the legal stuff, I think, there.
My biggest hope right now with open source is actually NVIDIA, because like their business model is incentivizes them to do real open source, which means the open source models they're releasing are like actually like kind of the most open, or at least the most open we have, because they're not just open sourcing they're not just like doing open weights, but they're open sourcing their entire training pipeline. They're basically like, here's how it was trained for at least, maybe not all, but like almost all of the training data. They're like, here's all the data we trained it on. Here's how we trained it. Here's and so it's like replicable. And so you can kind of like get a little more visibility into it. And it's just, we're in a helpful place where it's like NVIDIA makes money selling GPUs. And so if they get more people using open weight models, it benefits them. And so like, that's the model I'm like trusting the most. I would say it's not quite as good as some of the Chinese ones right now. But I suspect it's on a better growth trajectory. The truth of the matter is the Chinese ones are really good because they've just gotten incredibly good at distilling Claude. The Chinese models think they are Claude because they've gotten so good at distilling Claude. And so NVIDIA is like going a different trajectory, and so they're not going to be quite as there, but I suspect it's getting closer. But here's what I think. Like the NVIDIA Nematron Ultra is a 550 billion parameter model. Nematron Super is a 120 billion parameter model. We don't know how much Sonnet is. It could be anywhere from 200 billion parameters to a trillion parameters. There's different arguments to be made for either case. I think that we're getting close to a place where we can have models that are running at least in like a 500 billion parameter model, but increasingly like 120 billion parameter model that are really good. Gemma 4 is a 27 billion parameter model that is actually quite capable. And so here's kind of what I think. I think that more of these models will have better and better open source models. I think there's a chance that Anthropic eventually could open source, not Fable, they won't open source Fable, but they could open source Sonnet. Because at least as it stands right now, and you never know where the fuck AI research is going to go, but as it stands right now, these models that are like 200 billion parameter models to like a trillion parameter models, like they're less dangerous at the real things that we're really afraid of. They will get better, but there's limitations of just how many parameters they can have. And so I think and hope that we get really good models that are open source, open weight models that we can either run on like a local community data center where you can have like a $50,000 device that is providing inference for a lot of people, or for some where you have your $5,000 device that actually does a really good job. That we do that for most things, but that we still have things like Fable and these like crazy ultra intelligent class models that maybe do stay gated for a little bit to just like make sure we don't like totally burn our society down before we've like cultivated the wisdom to know what to do it. But then like my hope is I want to have like an open source Sonnet-class model running on my device that's processing all of my information so that all of my like journals, all my thoughts, all my everything that has all this information, intimate information about me, that never needs to leave my device.
Yeah, seriously.
But when I need epic intelligence to be like, I am trying to solve this deep problem and I need to write up a plan about how to do this and this and this and like think about this, that I can make a call to a Fable-class model. And I'm even okay with like some KYC there. It's like my model will make sure that there's like no personal information I don't want to share with Anthropic or whoever.
Yeah.
I'll compile like a deep research question, send it up to a Fable-class model, have it go and research a bunch of stuff, send it back down, and then my thing can do the work because Sonnet 5 is actually an incredible workhorse, and they just like showed that if you're using Fable and doing Sonnet 5 workers, where Fable is just orchestrating and planning, but Sonnet 5 is the one that's actually like doing all the work, it is 95% as good as just Fable for half the cost.
Is that a paper that you read that said that?
Yeah, it was an Anthropic tweet.
Okay. That's really interesting.
And so like I think that's it. It's like have the open source models that are actually good enough for 90% of things and are capable of orchestrating and working, and they're getting better and better. And then yeah, you can continue to date the Mythos class models for a little bit until we've like figured out how to hold them well in our society. Like I think that's quite reasonable. So that's my one thought there. My other thought is, of course, that, you know, part of the reason that US and China are gating these models is like, yeah, they're trying to protect people, but also what they're probably trying to protect is their own interest, because if you get these models out into the wild, society will probably, you know, have some mild to major collapses that happen. And these institutional governments and everything want to keep their power established. And so it's like, you know, they're protecting themselves. They're protecting everybody, but they're really protecting themselves. And so, you know, I think that needs to be reckoned with as well.
Yeah, next time we can go into entities, and I love it that word can mean so many different things. But like sometimes people talk about it in the New Age world, they talk about it as spirits, but entities, and it's funny because it's a corporation is sort of a spirit, but like an entity that does stuff. Well, a corporation and a state, both different types of entities. But we will save that for next time. Where are you writing anywhere? Can people find out more about what you're writing about? Where's Parachute?
Yeah, so my website is unforced.org, UNFORCED, like unforced. It's my dad gave me that term. It's like it emerges from the Taoist concept of Wu Wei, effortless action. So unforced.org is my website, which links to my Substack, and unforced.substack.com, although I'm working on kind of actually getting off Substack and doing all of my stuff published directly, and then using like an @proto thing that like gets it out into a Substack like distributed alternative. So I'll be migrating away from Substack, but for now my writing is double published on unforced.org and unforced.substack.com. I post a little bit about Parachute there. I'm a little behind on publishing there, but that's where I do some of my deepest writing. And then also parachute.computer is where Parachute is. And there's a blog on there that's also double listed as a Substack that's linked there, but I'll be migrating that one away from Substack even sooner. So I'll just share parachute.computer/blog is a good way to get up-to-date information on Parachute and where it's unfolding. But yeah, find me on any of these platforms, Aaron Gabriel Neyer, pretty much everywhere on the internet. And I can be found easily, and I'm sharing a lot, but Parachute and Unforced are the big things.